I remember when I first heard about the earthquake and tsunami in Japan. And although this may seem odd, I must admit that I didn't understand. And it was not that I didn't care, or that I was ignorant, but it was the sheer enormity of the disaster, which I couldn't comprehend. I am now at an age where I'm becoming more globally aware. I turn on the news and I read newspapers, and I sort of get the gist of what is going on around the world. But I guess that it is because I'm still young, that I care about, or I'm more intrigued by the personal stories behind these headlines. And with this particular incident in Japan, I felt as though they were being strongly ignored, or certainly undermined in the mainstream media. All I knew about was the Fukushima nuclear plant, and I think that's the same case with a lot of us. And it was not until I spoke with my grandmother on the phone, who lives in Japan, that I realized she could have been there. My aunt could have been there. And my friends could have been there. And luckily, I don't know anyone who was directly, largely affected, but the thought of it still taunted me. And after contemplating this for a long time, I decided to take the opportunity that the personal project gave me to do something that was really special, something that people would remember, and something that I could share with my community. I set my guiding question as how could I raise awareness of the personal impacts of the tsunami and earthquake in Japan through a short documentary. This film was something that I was very interested in at the time. My first step was to send emails to various NGOs all around Japan, asking for their input, their cooperation, and if I could interview any of the survivors that they were in contact with. I received one reply which was extremely critical. Who was my target audience? How was I going to measure my success? And that I needed to be extremely careful. These people that I wanted to interview had just experienced a catastrophic disaster, experienced things that are way beyond my imagination, that I was going to have to do a lot of research, not to be rude or insensitive. And although the email was harsh, it was a reality check for me. After all, I was just a student from Hong Kong. I was safe. I was an outsider. Who was I to expect people to open up to me, share with me their emotions and their horrible memories of what happened? But out of several that I sent, I received one reply saying yes. It was from Mr. Kawakami, who was the coordinator of the NGO called Hamasen, based in Kisenuma, a small fishing village in Miyagi Prefecture, which was largely affected by both the earthquake and the tsunami. I was really excited when I got his reply, but I was also really nervous and scared because this meant that it was actually happening. I was actually going to have to physically go there and do it justice. Do the victims, do Mr. Kawakami, my parents, my personal project justice. So in June, I traveled to Kisenuma with my mother. And when I arrived at Sendai Airport, the airport, which was once a thriving international airport with 2 terminals, now had barely one building, 1 gate, and 1 baggage claim. And there I was in my Wellington boots and my huge, enormous backpack, and my camera and my tripod. And I felt foreign, and I was really scared. Now that I was in the land, I didn't know what could happen to me. Anything could happen. When I arrived at Hamasen, which took a long time, I slept in a small gym with the volunteer workers and even some survivors who had yet to receive a temporary home. And the next day, I worked at the fields where the volunteer workers worked. And it was both physically and emotionally draining. Some 500 meters away from the actual ocean, in the mud, there was clothing, plates, toys, furniture, pieces of wall. And I remember, in the mud, seeing a textbook, a math textbook, that I used myself in my old school. My mother also found a photograph. You don't know what has happened to these people. Behind every object, there was someone who you once owned that. And I was slower at working than most of the other volunteers. Our main aim was to get everything into plastic bags and ready to throw away. But then I realized, what if that was my stuff? What if that was those things that I cherished since my childhood? What would I want? I would want them to be treated with care and respect. During the interview process, I was extremely lucky that Mr. Kawakami was very supportive of my project and was willing to help me make my project the best as I could. I had the opportunity to interview two students, Kenta and Saki, one who was 15, one who was 13, same age as I was. They had lost everything. Their clothes, their books, their home. And Kenta even told me that for the first week after the earthquake, he didn't know if his family was alive. These people were the same age as me, going through things that were way beyond my imagination. And Kenta even had a paranoia that at any time the tsunami could strike again. He could lose everything. And his family, thank God they survived, but they could be gone for real this time. I also interviewed Mrs. Miura, who was the wife of a fisherman. Of course they lost their boat, which meant that they were out of business. But she also told me about the friendship she lost. Of course there are some friends of hers who are no longer with us, but some friends who didn't receive temporary homes versus the ones who did. The people who received food, the people who didn't. And the people who were lucky and the people who weren't. Mr. Onodera was a man living in the shelter with us because he was yet to receive a temporary home. This was 3 months after the earthquake. He had 2 small children. Living in a gym with approximately 50 others, complete strangers, for 3 months. I don't know what that must have felt like. And while I was interviewing him, I could sense a sense of anger within him. But it was not vicious, it was a sense of defeat. I cannot describe what it was, because you actually have, those are the kind of emotions that you have to see in the people's faces, in their eyes, and through their gestures. But what intrigued me, especially with Kenta and Saki, is that no matter what happened to them, they had such an open-minded and positive attitude about their future. And I could tell that everything they told me was genuine and honest. And I realized when I got back to Hong Kong that that was probably the first time they had ever released all of their emotions, talked about their experience to someone else. And it may have helped that maybe I wasn't a journalist, I was just a student, I was young, and I had no political authority or anything like that behind my intentions of interviewing them. So that made me really happy, because I knew that I was doing something for myself, my community, but I was also doing something for them. Now I was very fortunate that I had the resources and the support and the language to be able to physically get as close as I could to a first-person account of reality. But I was just a student with a large ambition. Realistically, my documentary will only be seen by a small community and will not make a huge impact on the world. What I hope to achieve, especially among young people like myself, is that next time when you read the news and you see an article and you think, oh goodness, that's awful, think about the people behind, what they're going through. It's unimaginable. One thing that will stay with me forever is what Mr. Onodera said to me towards the end of his interview. He said, all I want is my old life back. This was 3 months after the earthquake had actually happened. And yet, he was still living in a shelter with his family, unable to do anything about it. That's when I realized your life can change in a split second, overnight. But you have to be strong and not be naive, and to keep pushing no matter what happens. What started out as a curiosity turned into an experience that will stay with me forever. And I know that sometimes it may be impossible or very difficult to do what I had the opportunity to do, was to physically go there and have the support of people and to be able to physically experience what it was like. But if you are curious about anything in your life, I highly recommend that you seize any opportunities which allow you to physically be there. Touch it, smell it, hear it, feel it. Because only then will you get the slightest glimpse of the reality of the situation. Because in the end, when you see it, is when you will believe it. Thank you very much.